Welcome, sir.
Welcome to you, and welcome to everyone to another edition of Wicked Opportunities Live, which is our live stream of our podcast, which has not existed for a long time. The podcast.
How does a podcast exist? If it exists in our hearts and our minds, doesn't it still exist?
I think that's relevant to what we want to talk about today a little bit. But the podcast is coming back. The podcast is coming.
Yeah.
We've been
on a hope
busy.
and a prayer. So let's just define. The podcast is the umbrella, right? So
that's true.
Right? Because podcasts today are like recorded on camera, and there's the term podcast is used pretty liberally these days.
It is, but it's as the cool kids would say. I don't know what the cool kids would say, but it's like it's
so
all in.
We've had a traditional podcast in the past, and we will talk about how that's making a comeback in a unique way.
Yes.
But we've never, I don't think, really ever stopped the live streams. I mean, we'll take a month off every now and again.
Yeah, we've been consistent with the live streams.
But the live streams have been consistent.
And they're one of our favorite things to do anyway, because we get to sit here in front of the camera, record it so people can watch it later. And this is always the place where we sort of cut loose. I mean, the podcast, there's always the Frank and Yvette show with TFSX and the Frank, Yvette, and Nicola show. But on the live streams, we sort of like dive into really deep, heady messages.
I'd say too, if you subscribe to the podcast, we've also been dropping some of the creating foresight fueled action video, but just the audio portion.
That's right. As a matter of fact, we just did the one with Sophie Strand.
Yeah.
And so there is a video of me interviewing Sophie Strand for creating Foresight Fuel Action that you can find at my.tfsx.com.
Yeah.
But also, we're dropping those as just, you can listen to it podcasts. So, and that's one of I think it is the latest episode that you can find on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. So.
Yep. So I'm just moving around our stuff here.
So I don't want to waste too much time because
so here's the deal with today, friends, is that this might be like the most important live stream we've ever done.
That's what I put up on LinkedIn just
no pressure
moments ago. It's hey,
pressure.
For those last minute stragglers that didn't know we were doing this, I think this is the most important live stream or podcast or message maybe that we've ever presented.
Yeah, so it'll be recorded, and just a scheduling note. We will be ending this at just 5 minutes to the top of the hour. So we're going to go for about 55 minutes.
That's right.
But this is just the beginning of the conversation, friends. So, but let's get into it. And I know folks are still joining, but this will be recorded. Yeah. You'll be able to refer back to it, but we do want to get to lots and lots of stuff. So, wow, I feel like we need to just start by taking a breath. Let's just, what a year this week has been.
Yeah, that's true.
Let's just begin with that, acknowledging that the elephant in the room.
If you're
get it, the elephant.
That's cute. I was just gonna say, if you've been on social media at all,
Or
And
if you've been a citizen of the earth.
yeah, of the earth is an important part because
Yes.
right now, as we speak, around the world, there are massive protests going on.
Yeah.
Now, if you aren't a citizen of the US, you might be surprised to hear, or you might not be surprised to hear, that that is not making the news here at all,
Yeah.
the mainstream news. There's no reporting on the fact that in Germany and in Italy and in France and in India, there are major protests going on around the world right now for not only what's happening in the United States, but also being reverberated to those countries. The EU has gathered. There was major meetings. None of that's made the media here in the United States. Has been completely blocked out.
Well, and for good reason, I would say. I mean, the shock and awe campaign of the newly installed administration, and I use administration very loosely, and has been this shock and awe campaign has been really just sort of overwhelming in terms of the airwaves. I mean, there's really, it's almost impossible to get another message out.
That's right.
Not to mention that there's questionable things happening on our social media platforms in terms of the algorithm
That's right.
and, sort of quieting messages and sort of
Yep.
making messages that are really important go dark. So there's a lot going on, friends.
There's a
And if
lot.
you're a user of scenarios, I dust off that fortress scenario because it's going to come in handy. So look, we know that we're obviously US centric. We work out of the US, although our clientele is global. We also recognize that this election has consequences way beyond the US and apparently Greenland, and all other places, and not just because of things that our newly positioned leader is looking to take on, but just because we know the way the U.S. goes and the policies of the U.S. and the mindsets and perspectives of the U.S. can trickle. So we wanted to have this conversation, and in reality, it's part of a larger piece of dialogue and really
Yeah.
core to who we
That's
are
right.
as a firm and as people and as professionals in this field. And I've been looking forward to this
Me
conversation.
too.
And we're going to ruffle some feathers today, and
Yeah.
that's okay. If you are uncomfortable by what we say today, I would just encourage you to lean into that discomfort and ask yourself why you feel uncomfortable. We aren't looking to diss, as the kids say, anyone, but we have to speak our truth. And so when we think about the current landscape and the critical time we are in the world, right, in history, it's clear that the greatest weapon that's being used by those seeking to maintain the status quo or go backwards aren't bullets and tanks or even laws at this point. The greatest weapons that are being used right now are ensuring that people are hopeless, that they don't have time to imagine a different outcome or a different future, and that they don't feel like they have agency to
That's right.
create better futures.
That's right.
That's the bad news. The good news is that there is no better profession, no profession better equipped to address those weapons than the field of foresight. So, this is an opportunity for all of you who consider yourself professional foresight practitioners, futurists who are in an adjacent field, change management, strategy, innovation. You know who you are. If you are part of our community, chances are you're already locked and loaded. All right. We are the ones that are now on the front lines to unleash what we believe is humanity's greatest gift. And that is the ability to imagine and to create better futures for all.
Yes. I was saying to one of my friends the other day, the wonderful Dr. Bhavana Nasima, that I'm not as concerned as I used to be about just creating massive alternative future stories as I am about creating alternative realities. And that is the depth of future thinking, right? You were saying to me a few minutes ago that just several weeks ago, several months ago, We had hoped for a different outcome in our present elections in the United
We
States.
were convinced. Convinced. And I think back to that, like, obviously, was I in a confirmation bias bubble? I don't know. I don't care because for a few months we had hope, and it was intoxicating. It was the Summer of the Eras tour, just off of the Barbie summer before, and we had Kamala. Dang it, we had it all. Anyway, we were devastated to say the least.
Yeah. And of course, you make an interesting point because I think that, past politics, if you probably met Kamala Harris, you would say, oh my gosh, what a nice person. People that know her think she's just wonderful and everything. She's a politician.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, there would be a lot of people that might be progressives or leftists or whatever who would say, she's a centrist,
Yeah,
we didn't really
absolutely.
want her to be
Yeah.
president necessarily. I saw a TikTok or a reel yesterday where somebody was saying, like, looking pretty good, right? She's looking pretty good right now.
She's looking like a crisp glass of water in the desert.
Yeah. So my point there was simply that, and what you were saying to me is really interesting, and this kicks us into Forsyth's resistance, is that if she had won, we might have done what we did when Biden won, which is like, thank goodness we got back to normal.
We take a deep breath, we get back to work, start, keep going. We feel like, no, we're making progress. We're totally making progress. Thank God we avoided another term. Yeah, for sure. No, we would have been cheering on the first woman president, no doubt. Right. It would have been historic. But you're right. We would have fallen probably back into old patterns and habits.
Just a centrist way of sort of viewing the United States policy that has a big effect on the rest of the world, sadly, but it does.
And an ability to sort of ignore what's been happening even before this latest president became reinstalled, which is that there's a large swath of this world that's suffering from income inequality. We have huge issues around global warming and climate change. And it would be far easier to ignore those big issues on a day-to-day basis if we were comfortable with our, elected official at the thing. So we're not
that might not be the candidate that, if somebody is really wanting to see alternative realities come into being, like I just said a moment ago, is going to make that happen, but at least it wouldn't be somebody who is going to push us all off of a cliff on purpose as a feature, not a bug.
What's interesting about having the latter, and it's the reality that we have, so it's in some regards it's a moot point, is that having a president like we do, I'm not ready to say his name again yet, is positioning us for breakthrough, for transformation, because no one wants the breakdown. And so I personally can say that I feel called. I feel, there was a period of time of grieving for sure. And I know we'll have moments of time when we need to rest. But I feel a renewed passion for creating longstanding change. And I think, again, we're just uniquely equipped as futurists to be able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So where do we sort of want to go from here? Because I think that really sets the stage for the fact that it sets the stage for the idea that Forsyth is not just a resistance during a time when things seem like we need to really resist. It really always has been.
Yeah. Yeah.
What you were trying to say is that, oftentimes it takes a crisis to sort of get us moving, right? Yeah. But that's unfortunate because we believe that foresight and futures thinking has always been about alternative realities, about transformation, about hope, and about love, because love is an action. It's not a word, it's not a feeling, it's an action. And if we're going to create better futures, that ties directly into love. If I love people, I will create better futures for them. If I'm creating better futures, it means I love them. Love is absolutely tied to futures thinking if you understand it as being more than business as usual or propping up business as usual. So one of the things that we're seeing right now, and I might be stealing your thunder what you were about to say.
I was just gonna, go ahead.
I'll just say it briefly, and then we'll get back to what you were about to say. And that is that we're seeing, I think Forsyth's more popular than it's ever been right now.
No, for sure. For sure. And I think that's in part why this might be a contentious conversation.
That's right. Because it's more popular than it's ever been, because you do see a lot of what I'm talking about in the last few seconds there rising.
Yeah.
And you see a huge rise in people saying foresight needs to show us how to remain relevant in the dominant narrative.
Yeah. Yeah.
I need to sell more X. I need to be a bigger company. We need to 10X our company. I want to get to $1 billion, $1 trillion or whatever. And that is only reinforcing the system. Again, it's not looking for alternative realities. So this is where the feathers get really ruffled.
Yeah. And I would just say, like, I'll compare this to something that happened to me last week was a heck of a week. Let me just say. We had
a big week last week.
We had, our new president put into office and signing executive orders like it was going out of style. And in the midst of all that, as you know, I was called for jury duty.
Yes.
And for those of you not in the US, you may not be familiar with our system, but if you are registered to vote and if you have a driver's license, I don't know what the criteria is, but
I think it's registered to vote. So.
It might be the driver's license though.
Ooh, that would be a change because it used to be voting.
Just to be registered to vote?
Yeah. Once you register to vote.
So you could avoid jury duty if you just don't register to vote?
Correct. That doesn't make sense.
One
of my daughters won't register to vote because she doesn't want to go to jury duty.
That's amazing. Anyhow,
not good.
You become eligible to be called for jury duty. And typically what happens is you go down, either you don't even get called that day, like the day before they tell you we don't need you based on the caseload, or you go down, you hang out for a few hours and then they cut you loose. Well, that's not what happened to me. I was actually chosen as part of 50 or so individuals that were going to be considered for a jury trial that was going to take place the next day. And despite my best efforts wearing a COVID mask, and I mean, let's be clear, I also wanted to be picked in a really simple way.
You're a pick me.
I am a pick me.
You are a pick me, my friend.
I wanted to impress both the defense and the state. And I was actually fascinated by the whole process. It was really, really interesting. And also watching the human dynamics of people attempting not to get picked.
Yeah.
And the judge sort of calling them out. It was like a reality television show where you're in it, basically, so that was interesting.
You said a key thing right there, because I think you were fulfilling your television dream.
No, for sure. No, for sure.
Law and Order or something,
For sure, I was in. So they chose 7 of the 50, and I was one of 7, juror number 4. And so I will spare you all the details. The point of me telling you this story is that it was actually a very challenging and emotional trial. It was a criminal trial related to domestic violence, specifically battery on someone over 65 years old. And it was a son and his father that had gotten into an altercation. And where it got like life, complex and complicated, was that the son, who lived with his parents and was 33 years old, or 31 at the time of the incident 2 years ago, he has suffered from mental health issues since he was a child. Single digits is what the dad said. And although the parents were the ones that called for the police, they actually took the stand in favor of their son. And as victims of the crime, actually did not want him to be prosecuted.
But by the law, the state still wanted to prosecute him anyway.
Yeah, because technically, by the letter of the law, since mental illness is not a defense against this law, he was guilty. And so when we went into the deliberation room, there was actually 6 of us. One was an alternate. She found out at the last minute. It was like, dun-dun-dun. Anyway, we go into the deliberation room, and the person who was chosen as the foreman of the jury, 4-person, he was like, well, let's go for a vote because I'm pretty sure everyone's going to say what I think they're going to say, which was guilty. And I really messed things up because I said not guilty. Anyway, the whole point is that it was a very, very trying time because I was torn. By the letter of the law, he was guilty. But when I looked at the extenuating circumstances and I put my humanity, my heart first, I couldn't imagine saying that this guy needed to go to jail. And what they drilled into us from jury selection all the way through giving us instructions was that it doesn't matter whether you like the law or not. You have to do your job as a jury person.
Oh, that's interesting. I know where this is going.
And so this idea of just doing my job, I'm just doing my job, right? I think that in the environment that we're in, that goes out the window. And the idea of just doing my job needs to be questioned. We need to question that at every moment. Are you just doing your job? Are you? Or is that an easy way to placate yourself and to make yourself feel better when you have to have a difficult conversation?
That's right.
At the end of the day, I had one other person, one other juror on my side, and he ultimately acquiesced, and we agreed that by the letter of the law, he was guilty, and the judge will take it from here in terms of sentencing. And
Right.
I really believe the judge will do his job, and have mercy. But as an example, I think it showcases how in our professional roles as well, it's really easy to fall into the habit of, I'm just doing my job. I work for Acme Corporation, whether I'm a futurist, an accountant, or a finance professional. Is it my job to help Acme be successful?
Yes.
Right. And so, in what paradigm and what measurement and what time frame, and who's measuring it,
Yep.
And so I think that's where the feathers potentially get ruffled, because there are different schools of thought about how foresight should be practiced.
So as a member of not just the human species, but of planetary life and of the cosmos, is it your job to act in a way, to live in a way, to work in a way, to talk in a way, this list could go on for a while, that brings about better alternative realities than the one we're living in right now? Yes. So there's a double bind, as Nora would say, right? Because it's like, well, I work for this corporation and that's how I pay for my house and my food and da-da-da-da. But my mind's already racing because there's so many things we can say about this. But it's like, it is so critical for us to understand that as futurists, foresight professionals, future thinking people, whatever you might call it, we do have, and just as humans, we have an ethical and moral responsibility to the future, to one another, to life itself. And that means that we have to bring into question, is the company you're working for resulting in that? Is it perpetuating the problem, the crisis? Is it adding to it? Do we stand up and call that out? And I would say the answer is 1,000 times over, yes. Will it cost you? Yes.
Yeah. And as I have been doom scrolling, like many of us, I've learned so much from activists, and there are so many doing incredible work. I believe futurists are activists as well. And we want to provide you today with some very, very, I think, tactical ways that we can move forward as individual futurists and as a profession and as a member of the TFX community. But I will say that to add to your point here is this quote from something that I saw, that don't set yourself on fire to keep others warm.
What does it mean?
Don't set yourself on fire to keep others warm. Ultimately, let's remember that our roles for clients or within organizations, ultimately, yes, we are in a relationship with this organization, but let's really question our allegiance, because ultimately, what are we doing? Are we really setting ourselves up as a society for success? And ultimately, these organizations are made up of people. So it shouldn't be this difficult to get people to do the right thing. But ultimately, we can't dismantle a system when we can't dismantle our personal attachments within that system.
So powerful.
So there's some work to be done individually here before we even set out to try to change the world or create the resistance that we want.
So
but
don't set yourself on fire to keep others warm.
Don't sacrifice your own humanity and your own future. Everybody talks about being on the right side of history. I want to be on the right side of the future.
Correct.
I want to be on the right side of the future.
That's
friends.
Right. Love it.
And so
love it.
If your foresight right now is just executive entertainment,
that's all it is.
If you're
in the end, that's all it is. And we haven't even gotten heavy yet. It's coming. It's coming.
I know. Yeah. So again, if you've been around here for a minute, none of this should be shocking to you
Yeah.
that we believe this. This has been in our DNA for a long time. But like anything else, we really believe foresight's natural. We believe business practices should be natural. And as a natural growing thing, we're growing, we're changing, we're leaning into this aspect
Yeah.
of ourselves more so. And we just want to welcome those that want to join alongside us.
Exactly. I don't mean to focus on the ones the argumentative piece, although Nicole's been writing, great this week on, the fact that conflict can be a good thing, right? Conflict resolution. So there was somebody that had a conflict with what we were saying not long ago, and they wrote. I want to be careful how I word this, but I still want to be pointed about it. They wrote back and said, if you just think that businesses are going to just go away overnight, you live in a fairyland. And let me tell you what, I don't think they meant to be disingenuous, but let me tell you what's disingenuous about that. The word business. Because what they should have said is, if you believe corporations, we have a client right now, because we've been a little bit more selective about clients we've taken over the past many years. And this client has been saying to us in all of our interviews that we've been doing with them, we went public years ago. I wish we were still a private company. Because being public has made us beholden to the shareholders. And I wish that we were like X company and we're still private, so we weren't beholden to this capitalistic system. Because what we would do would be about everything about love. You see the Ben and Jerry's commercial this past week?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like I feel like yes, and Ben and Jerry's is a great example.
Yeah, like, we are standing with dismantling white supremacy. Have a Ben and Jerry's.
Yeah. So there's great examples of organizations, whether they're public or private.
Once they go corporate,
It's an easy excuse to say, because we've had nonprofits say, "Oh gosh, I wish we could be public," or "I wish we." Everybody wishes.
There's a big argument about the dominant narrative
for something else, and it's
not.
It's not the way your organization is organized. It is a lack of spine by those within the organization.
I always think about Green Lantern. His green ring was the willpower. It's like, it's just a matter of will. But then we come back with all of these very good sounding arguments that have data and numbers attached to them, and the double bind and the system that is, and that it's just a matter of will. It's a matter of will.
And
what it comes down to.
Recognizing that we're not alone.
Yep.
And I think this is, such a powerful way that the dominant narratives are sustained and the systems of oppression continue, is that every single one of us feels like we're alone in believing that there's got to be a better way. And in part, what we want to do with our work going forward is to strengthen the bonds of our community by providing safe spaces for us to commune, to learn, and to gain our confidence before we go out there and continue to democratize the future. I want you to share.
I want to share too.
Yes.
But and I know we'll be pressed for time here. But Gabriel says something really important here. He says, "I love your call, but sometimes it gets hard to fully believe that we can make a change and help organizations that think in the communities and the future of the country." You were sharing with me something about 3.5%.
Yes, let's talk about 3.5%.
3.5%.
3.5%. Okay, this is important. So I want to talk to you about the work of Erica Chenoweth. She's a political scientist at Harvard University. And she has done extensive work on the benefits and the power of civil disobedience, and compared it to other violent forms of disobedience and that. And what she has found, and Nicole has the link there, she's going to drop it in the chat, that civil disobedience, it's not only the moral choice, it's also the most powerful way of shaping world politics. Now, I know what you're thinking, civil disobedience. Oh, I have to go out and march. I don't
smash a window or something.
I don't believe that's the only way to have civil disobedience.
Nope.
I believe foresight is a way to do civil disobedience.
Actually, what we're doing on this podcast right now is civil disobedience. And I
disobedience,
guarantee that there's a lot. This is what I was saying. The field has grown rapidly, and at least half of that growth is not on this podcast. They don't want to be here. They don't want to hear this message, and they would be vehemently against it. As a matter of fact, there's articles that have come out in the last several weeks saying, I'm vehemently against you guys saying that we can save the world. Foresight should be just helping businesses to do better at what they're already doing. That's an exact quote from an article that came up from a very, popular futurist recently.
So we call bullshit, but that's fine. Everybody can have their own opinions. We have ours. Okay, so here's the interesting thing about what Chenoweth says in her study. So she has studied a number of different protests, and she said that nonviolent protest is the best way to get widespread support. Specifically, she has found through studying multiple instances of protests and civil disobedience around the world, okay? And this article has them all listed, that once you get around 3.5% of the population to participate actively, the results are inevitable. You win when you get 3.5% of people on your side. So our call to each of you is think about the community that you serve, your network, your stakeholders, whether that's your organization, whether that's the clients you serve, whether that's your church community, your school community, whatever it is, your family, 3.5% of them. 3.5% of them. Teach them foresight. 3.5%. We're going to talk specifically what aspects of foresight in a moment, but 3.5. Can we do 3.5%? I feel like we can.
I feel like we can. I feel like we can, and we are.
We are.
Thank goodness for, Becky Cooperman and others that are on this call, and Stephen Litchie. The 3.5% are here.
Yes, they're here. We've got you.
Yeah. And they've got me. So I'm on board with them. Because it's so important for us to address this idea that it's not about us saying like, oh, well, it just seems overwhelming. That's what they want you to feel. Because if they can extinguish your hope, then you will fall in line.
You already lost. The fact that most authoritarian governments win because people automatically concede and start towing the line without even, they're already giving obedience without having to. We have to maintain hope and recognize that we aren't alone, and that that's one of the tools that they use to maintain the status quo, maintain the systems.
Yeah. Oh, Sheila, by the way, is another one. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Sheila? Are you kidding me? I would follow her to the ends of the earth. She is such a powerful foresight professional. You got me, Sheila. And
oh, I just got chills.
Yeah. And Michael saying, I'm going into a meeting right now. We're going to disrupt the dominant narrative. That's absolutely right.
Do it, friends.
And so I love this phrase that you told me earlier, that and foresight, because we're talking about the future. I don't get how this is even controversial, but we're talking about the future. I'm not talking about my future or the future of one company or the future of one. I mean, the future includes the cosmos. You can't address futures thinking about all of us, as Bonita Roy says. Biome, planetary, everything, all of it. And so one thing can't succeed. And I'm not propping up capitalism, and I'm not propping up consumption and hyper extraction, because those things shrink the future. So here's something I wanted to say, and I'm going to get right back to this. Somebody said to me the other day, that's your bias. I have a different bias. But let me tell you something about biases before you fall into that argument too quickly. Oh, yeah, I guess I just have a bias here, and somebody else has a bias about working at a company or whatever. If your bias is towards alternative realities, transforming, and the other bias is towards reinforcing the dominant narrative, guess which bias is the bigger bias? All opinions are not equal.
Nope.
And so if you're like, my bias is towards, just helping the status quo, that's what we already have.
That's the trap of like, oh, are you promoting inclusivity? Well, then you have to have the white supremacists come in as part of your inclusive
That's what we already have. Yeah, when we were doing our transformations retreat this past year, somebody wrote on a card and said, what voices are missing from this? Because we need all voices. And then I forgot that somebody was bound to write, we need to have, the capitalists come in here, and I'm like, we already have that. We don't need that voice. We need to get rid of that voice, right? Breaking the hegemony, pluriversality, as my friend Shahana Chattopadhyay says. So you said to me, we have a charter of shepherding toward the future. But as foresight grows, we were talking about it a moment ago, because I want to hit on this before we leave this completely. As foresight grows, the co-opting is growing. Now, one of the biggest places that this manifests all the time, or maybe this is just an example I can use that will really hit home with all of you, is when you read a trend report, and we're in that month of the trend report. We're leaving it right now, but all the trend reports just recently came out. There's 5 bazillion trend reports. Every damn single one of them focuses on the values, the ethics, and the morals of the people that created that trend report. And they all to a T, evangelize techno-solutionism. Every one of them. And the truth of the matter is exactly what we named this podcast. The future will not be televised. That's what's televised. The future is this undercurrent of resistance, the zeitgeist of care and love and empathy you won't find in any of those trend reports. They don't report on that. But look, here's an example. You go to LinkedIn and you scroll for 10 seconds, and you will see 10 posts. 7 of them will be about
AI.
The wonderment of AI.
Yep.
8 or 9 of them will be about the wonderment of AI. But there is a huge movement, trend, you might say, of people who are saying, and who are AI experts even, who are saying, don't use this technology. This is damaging to humans, to planet, to heart, to mind. This is only a technological product being promoted by 5 people that have stolen all of the land and money in the world. But we don't hear that. Oh no, but AI is going to help us. Da, 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 da. I love this solution looking for a problem. Yeah. First, I'll destroy everything by making AI, and then we'll create a solution.
Then AI will save us.
There are reams of books by people smarter than me saying AI is bullshit.
And it's not just AI. That's the current sort of.
None of those trend reports mention that, not one damn time. But it's a trend, it's a major trend. So the future is not being televised, friends. Yeah. But the resistance is something that's really driving what the future is.
So as futurists, one of the things we want you to take away from this conversation, and many of you already embody this, but as you are sharing this with your friends and colleagues, is question the dominant narratives. Question where you're scanning from. It's Foresight 101, friends. And don't fall into the trap of, because you've seen it show up a million times in your algorithm, that it is in fact the truth or the trend. Yeah. I want to make sure we get to this.
I do too. It was on the next page, because I was going to say, you already said want to be on the right side of the future. I make notes here so we wouldn't skip anything. It's so important today. Yeah. And this idea that what exacerbates the crisis mind, this does lead to this. Yes. Jonathan Rowson is, I think, one of today's best philosophers and philosophical thinkers. And if you've been watching us for a hot second, you know that I firmly, strongly believe that your philosophy precedes your actions. But we live in an environment of efficiency, productivity, do, don't think, just do. And that's how the system gets you to do its bidding. Yep. Bayo Akumalafe, one of our friends here at TFSX, says there's so much to get done that we need to slow down and stop doing.
If it wasn't so long, I would tattoo that on me somewhere, because
I really ink the stink, as they would say on The Office, right?
Yeah, say it again.
There's so much to get done. There's so much to do that we need to slow down and stop doing. Because when you keep doing, you're reinforcing the dominant narrative. So true. And Foresight is just as guilty of that as any field. Absolutely. Maybe more so. Yep. Because we're like, trend hunt. Where are the trends coming from? They're coming from the dominant narrative. The call is coming from inside the house. Call is coming from inside the house. The real future won't be televised, friends. You got to look, as Rafiki would have said to Mufasa, or to Simba, look harder. Look hard. Look harder, and you will see. So Rowson said that, look, we hear all these words, polycrisis, the meta crisis, the perma crisis, but all that does is reinforce a crisis mindset. Now, you and I were talking about this earlier. It's something very important that we need to state. That doesn't mean there aren't crises and we're like, blah, 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 blah. We're just ignoring crisis and everything will be okay. Optimism, blind optimism. That's not what we're saying. But what Ralston's saying and what we're saying is that if you live in a crisis mindset constantly, you will reiterate and reinforce the crisis. You'll just be like crisis, crisis, crisis. There's a quote that I can't remember.
It's the shock and awe of it.
It's the shock and awe of it.
It's the shock and awe of it. For
there is a great quote. I won't remember how it goes from the book Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, which is one of the most famous books of all time. I mean,
is there a book you haven't read?
Well, everybody knows this book, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. Old, I think it was written in the 70s, right? And it's just an amazing book. It's about Buddhism and motorcycle maintenance. And in the book, he basically says, if you burn down a factory and then you just rebuild the factory from the ground up, saying like, let's burn this down and rebuild it again, you'll build the same factory.
Yeah.
It's not the factory that's the problem. It's the mindset of the people building the factory.
Oh, yes.
So Ralston says that there are basically 3 attractors going on right now. What does he mean by that? First attractor, second attractor, third attractor. Yep, see, Sheila's read, or Becky's read it. Great book. He says the viable future for humanity is often framed as a search for a third attractor. This is really powerful, so listen to this. He says the first attractor is ecological collapse.
Check.
We got it. Oof, that's enough to put you in crisis mindset forever.
Right there.
The second attractor is the rise of authoritarianism.
Darn it. Check.
Which, by the way, I didn't read this part too because I didn't want you to be discouraged, but he says, which will grow stronger.
Great. Thanks for leaving that out earlier in the pre-show prep.
Borders will be contested, some combination of techno-feudalist economies. We have that. You saw, if you were watching the U.S. presidential inauguration, which I did not, and neither did she, but if you were watching it.
I watched clips of it after.
Right behind the president, they sat the 5 richest men in the world who this past week have, done the Nazi salute and said that we need more masculine energy and nonsense, stupid stuff. So techno-feudalism. But the third attractor is to avert the gravitational pull or the co-opting of the dominant narrative.
Okay.
So basically,
so you're saying there's a chance. We got a fighting chance.
Damn straight.
That third attractor sounds promising.
That's right. So H1 basically says, Horizon 1 says, this is where we are. This is what we had. These are the cards we're dealt. This is what we have to play with. I understand we could try to make a better future, but it has to be on the system that we have.
Yeah.
That will never happen. Let me tell you why. You can't destroy a system, or you can't just change the system is what I should be saying, because the system plays by a certain set of rules. Once you change one rule, the system collapses. The system will fight you tooth and nail not to change one single damn thing about it.
Yep.
So you will be pulled back constantly into that as long as you're like, hey, let's do this incrementally better thing to make things better. And let's just, let's play the game of the system. Let's play with the cards that we are dealt. It won't happen. He says the third attractor is not fully specified or politically salient today, but as Marcel Proust once put it, the real voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes, not rebuilding the factory, but changing our hearts.
Having new eyes.
Yeah. So he says, among people I know, I believe that Benita Roy and Nora Bateson and Ivo Minch and Mark Vernon, all people that we love to interview all the time here, they're really talking about this because they put an emphasis on how the new world might feel instead of how it might look. How does it feel instead of how it looks? This is what I was saying a minute ago that Bio was saying. If your philosophy's not right, your actions will be all screwed up. And if you're like, I want to do better, but you're still playing on the philosophy of the dominant narrative and the co-option, you will still co-opt. It's almost not your fault.
Yeah.
I don't blame you.
Yeah.
But there's a better way to think and then act, right?
Yeah.
And so he says, with a greater emphasis on metaphysics, a new perception of time, a new view of causality, a direct perception of value, an appreciation for complex potential states. But in the end, it might be that the third attractor is just simply thought of and profoundly as love. And then he says, the Fesser Institute, who speaks of a spiritual foundation for a loving world, might seem too quaint at first blush, but who's to say that love, after all, is not the bottom line answer? So the third attractor is not one idea, but more like a disposition not to give up on the future. Stop giving up on the future.
Don't give up on the future.
The future hasn't happened yet. It is our ethical responsibility not to give up on it. And then one last little part, because this is very important. It is the visionary who lives in this third horizon or this third attractor.
You're the visionary. You're the futurist.
Who provides the inspiration and imaginative resources to overcome the coercive co-option and systemic inertia of the Horizon 1 system and the Horizon 2 pull back into Horizon 1. A visionary is a person with good ideas about the future. They might have qualities of a prophet or a designer or an artist, but above all, they see something that offers others a sense of direction. Anticipatory or futures consciousness will transcend and include the present moment by envisaging and articulating an inspiring form of life. We need a big V vision for inspiration and direction today. Just as creativity really matters and creative research refers to a little c creativity, like a child's drawing, and then a big C creativity, like the breakthroughs of Einstein's physics. So it is with vision. There's a little V vision for your own life, but there's a big V vision for this global movement that steers us away from the co-opting, the extinguishing, the shrinking of the future, the extraction, the exploitation, the hyper-capitalism, the hyper-consumption, none of which you can build on and see alternative realities come to pass. But it only takes 3.5% of us.
Yeah, the images of the future precede, right? Precede.
Yes.
The
images of the future precede the future that we're going to build, right?
Yeah.
We got to this guy, the Orangina, as some call him, the Cheeto face. We got the Cheeto face because we keep saying, oh, just use the future to reinforce the dominant narrative and co-opting. But you can't think about the future without thinking betterment for all of us, right? Last but not least, without some vision that is worthy of our better natures and aware of our worst natures, it's almost inevitable that societal innovation becomes assimilated rather than leading to deeper, lasting qualitative change. When I hear that word assimilated, I can't help but think about the Borg.
Yeah, really.
And as long as we use foresight to just say we're going to do incrementally better, or even worse, to just co-opt to say, like, my company uses foresight to reinforce our business model and our goals, our present day measurement, we're being assimilated.
Yeah.
Foresight, by its very nature, resists assimilation.
So we could sit here and argue whether what folks are practicing in those organizational contexts is truly foresight. But that's not the point of our conversation today. The point is that if you're here and you're listening to this, whether live or on the recording, then you're uniquely positioned to be able to create this movement of where we only need 3.5% of us. So how do we do it? With the last couple minutes, we're just going to share some last sort of summary information, tell you what we're doing as TFSX now and going into the future to support all of you in this work. So to recap, as futurists, we're positioned to be the best activists to resist and transform our world. We have to push back against the dominant narratives, which often present as top 10 trends that are highly techno-focused and not representative of the real change that's happening in the world.
And are written simply to serve the master, right?
Absolutely.
It's like that. You already know what you want to see when you read those trend reports, and like, oh, I love this one because it reinforces what I already thought.
And to that end, we have to do the hard work, both on ourselves and within our stakeholder communities. There's a reason why they're going after diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yes,
it is not just about racism. It is about racism, but it's also about the fact that those skills and those mental models are what's critical for us to have critical thinking. In order to be able to understand what is happening and the fallacies that are being fed to us and have the ability to think critically, we must have diversity, equity, and inclusion. And again, assumption and bias work is one of the most important pillars of foresight. So continue doing that work, both on yourselves and on your communities. Embrace the push and the pull of the future. Remember, it's not just about the trends that are pushing us into the future. It's about the future we want to create, and that's a more equitable future for all. Maintain your hope and optimism. What are we going to do here at TFSX to support you all doing what you're doing and continue to democratize foresight? How are we going to continue to elevate the field? Well, we're going to continue to offer ethically guided Foresight resources with the expressed purpose of creating meaningful change. We're going to lead with love and empathy like we always have.
That's right.
We're going to help you by creating safe spaces for you to commune, for you to learn, and for you to build the confidence you need and the courage you need and the hope and optimism you need to go off into your own communities. We know that in-person community building is what's critical. We offer the virtual kind, and know that you all will take those tools and that knowledge and that insight into your in-person communities. What does that look like tactically for the next year? I'll share a few things. Next live stream, we'll go into a little bit deeper. We invite you to join us on MyTFSX in The Collective. The Collective is our activist futurist community. As you know, many of you know, we've had MyTFSX now. It's almost been 2 years. It is our learning delivery system, and we are going to be leaning into the community element of that even further by establishing the collective. This is a membership-driven platform. If you're interested in joining us, there's a nominal fee that helps us support through. You would never imagine how much it costs to keep this software up and running. My soul and several $100s every week. So there is a nominal fee. We do have the opportunity for those of you that wish to gift the gift of membership for someone in a part of the world that maybe cannot afford the $165 a year for this membership.
And the link is now in the
We
chat.
have the opportunity for you to buy that subscription or that membership for somebody else. Of course, we continue to offer tuition assistance for anyone that needs that access. With that membership, this is the important part. You will not only gain access to the ability to commune, but we're offering very unique and special learning opportunities for members of the collective so that we can not only just collaborate, because we know those message boards and that social media aspect only goes so far. We need to learn together. We need to have communities of practice together. So as a member of the collective, you'll not only have access to the Dragonfly Journey, which many of you are already a part of, which is Frank's guided journey over the next year. There's 5 community of practice meetings and guided learning.
And this is diving deep into that philosophy we talked about, a good grounding of foresight that's biological, psychological, and sacred so that we can be the futurist activists we want to be instead of just doing the work, as Bio says, and not slowing down long enough to say, what foundation are we doing it from? Come join us at the Dragonfly journey. You're not going to regret that.
Yeah. In addition, members of the collective for that same yearly membership price will also have access to a new offering, the Wicked Opportunities learning course that's going to allow you to thrive and feel empowered with hope throughout this next year. That course will be really unique in that we're going to go into the vault into our original collection of podcasts, which were released in 2020 and 2021.
Yeah.
We believe that those lessons have never been more relevant.
We should have made them last week.
Yeah, really. And we will be hosting live streams every month in support of that content.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for a way to learn on demand, but also be supplemented with live experiences, or these live streams will help us even make that content even more relatable, that Wicked Opportunities program is a great one. Again, all part of the collective membership. Lastly, we're going to be piloting a program that will allow individuals that will serve as hosts on the collective to host 30-day challenges. We really want to make foresight an everyday activity, and we want to reach communities that we haven't reached before. So if you're a member of that pilot community of hosts, you already know, because we're about to launch. If you're interested in this type of opportunity going forward, we'll pull a call out in the next few months for the next round of hosts. And those hosts, again, have access to licensed content and host 30-day challenges on the platform. Ultimately, we know that providing cost-effective ways to learn, share, and grow are so critical. We want to ensure that you all feel future ready, that we are empowering you with hope, and that we're embracing the consciousness that we're all in this together, and that foresight is the way for us to move forward. Again, trusting in our current social media algorithms is not enough, which is why we're inviting you to join the collective on our platform, where we know we have a safe, curated content where you will be amongst like-minded individuals, and we will not be sort of battling against algorithms to make sure you see the content. So if you're following us elsewhere, make sure you follow us on YouTube. We hope you join the collective and become a member. And if you have questions about any of these offerings, you know where to reach us. Again, we're going to be back live every month, working our way through wicked opportunities as we've done in the past. We think these lessons are the most critical lessons we've ever shared. And we hope that you'll not only join for the free live stream, but you'll join us in that course, which is part of the collective. So the live streams will continue to be free. We'll continue to offer free guest membership in MyTFSX, but we hope you'll join us as part of the collective to unlock these additional benefits. And again, if you want to gift this membership to someone else, there is a gift card available on our shop. We'd love to have you gift someone. You don't even need to know who it is. You can just say, I want to donate this, and we will find a person who's in need, who wants to join the collective. And we hope
somebody that can become part of that 3.5%, or as Stephen says, a part of the Futures Ops Club, so that during the day, he and Becky hear this conversation. We'll call it a book discussion, but we know what it really is.
Right. If you're on TikTok, it's winter boots.
Yeah. And I thought you would really like this because he said cardigans by day, which reminded me of Tay-Tay a little.
Yes, of course he knows.
And then lycra suits at night as we're ninjas. Like ninjas.
It's like, I wonder if Lululemon will help us create those lycra suits.
They gave the client away. Here it was. Like, go Lululemon, you do you. And yeah, I couldn't stress enough. It's like that ops, a group that Steve is talking about, who he is a part of that. Already, I happen to know, is the collective, and it is joining us at the Dragonfly Journey and all the other stuff that's on the collective that Yvette talked about as well.
So friends,
come.
Also help us, even if you can't gift that membership. Share this live stream with anyone in your network that you think is looking for the inspiration that you were looking for today. Share it. It doesn't cost anything to share it. And this is how we can continue to expand our reach and get more and more of us to get joined into this 3.5% movement. We love you all. We thank you all for joining. I don't know if you could tell, but we were super passionate about today's topic.
A little tiny bit.
Just a little tiny bit. And we're going to leave you for now until next time. We hope to see you around on the collective. We love you all, and we'll talk to you soon.
Take care.
Bye-bye, everybody.